In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute cartoon Halloween koala from start to finish using the iPad and Procreate. Just like all my videos too, it's all in real time. There's no time lapse or edits. You can follow along every step of the way, from the sketch process to adding inks, to putting in color flats, adding the shadows, the highlights, and then finally finishing up with a background. That's all featured in today's video. Also, if you guys follow along with any of my video tutorials, make sure you share your work online. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, share your post on there and tag me at BeeJayDeL so I can check them out. And you'll also have your chance to be featured in one of my upcoming videos, just like the people that you see here. So that was the last video all about the ant. Today it's about the koala, so let's get started. All right guys, so let's go ahead and draw a cartoon koala for Halloween. Starting out, I'm using a 3000 by 3000 300 DPI canvas. It's an RGB canvas. And for my brush, start out sketching, I'm gonna use my 9B pencil. That's part of my pencil pack for Procreate. This is available on Gumroad. We're gonna switch over to the cartooning pack after this for the inking and coloring. And then for my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made, so if you want to download the exact same colors that I'm using in today's video, you can find that for free on my website. If you go to BeeJayDeL.com, underneath the YouTube reference materials page, which I'll also link it down in the description below, you can find a link to that along with the video at the top that kind of walks you through how to install a palette in Procreate if you haven't done it before. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to start out sketching, and for all my sketches, I just use basic shapes to get the ideas out onto the screen or on the canvas here. So this is going to be the head here. We're just going to start with a basic circle or oval shape. And let's go ahead and kind of have him at a 3/4 view here. So I'll do a center line here so we can kind of see where the perspective is going to lie. And then from here, I'm not going to have it be a perfect circle or oval. So we're going to pull a curve here along the bottom. It's going to be kind of the bottom of the head coming out there, and then we'll follow this back in and along that line that we had initially for the circle or the oval. So that's going to be the basic shape of the head here. From here, let's go ahead and throw some ovals in for the ears. Now you'll see here with the perspective line here in the center, everything here to the left is going to be closer to the viewer, so this ear here on this side is going to be larger than this ear. So that one's going to be a little bit smaller there. We throw in some tufts of hair here at the top. Just drawing some ovals where those are going to go. And this stage is supposed to be loose. It's supposed to be sketchy. It's supposed to be just a way to get the shapes out of our head and onto the screen. So we're going to fine tune this here in a little bit. Let's do some ovals here in the center for the insides of those ears there. We'll go ahead down here towards the face. Get an oval here for the nose where that's going to go. And then for that koala nose, we kind of need the more of the straight line that's kind of curved there at the top. It's not going to be that perfect oval. And then these straight lines that come down and curve into the bottom here. Get that shape in there. Now for the eyes, once again, kind of making some ovals here where the eyes are going to go. And then using those as guidelines, I'm going to kind of fine tune, give this a little bit more of a pointed curve here at the top. Comes down there into the bottom, and the same thing here. Just want those to have a little bit more of a point there at the top. Looks like that. Go ahead and get the pupils in here. Get those shaded in just so we know what they are there. And then get the irises around there. And throw in some eyebrows here at the top. Give them a little bit more expression here. A couple of curved lines. Meet there at that straight line across the top, just like so. Shade the nose in here, and then for the mouth, let's go ahead and kind of give him an open mouth here. Once again, This side here to the left is going to be longer then the side to the right. Just kind of bring this down here. Now I'm going to bring the chin out here to kind of make up for that coming down a little bit lower than the bottom of the face. So we'll just draw a curved line here for the chin. And we can bring this back in to meet. All right, so there's the head. We've got the head done. Let's go ahead now. Let's have him sitting in a pumpkin. So I'm gonna get the pumpkin shape done first. I'm gonna start with the open part of the pumpkin where he's sitting. So we'll just draw an oval here and get that sketched in. And I'm just gonna make it look like a bucket right now, just to get the overall position of this. And then we'll go in and make it look a little bit more like a pumpkin here shortly. All right, so we've got that. So for the body then and him sitting in the pumpkin, let's again kind of pulling this line down here. We've got the center line coming down and it kind of continues down there into the body. So that's gonna be the center of his belly or his chest. So we'll have the front of his chest here, and then we'll have his back coming down here. Once again, this left side here in between this part and this part to the middle is going to be a lot smaller than that side here on the right, just because of that 3/4 perspective that we've got going on. Let's kind of have him gripping over the top of the pumpkin lid here, the cutout. A couple paw lines there. We'll have his other arm coming out here and his other hand here. Once again, that right hand side being smaller than that left because of that perspective. We throw in like a little belly oval here so it's got a different color. And then we can start working on the pumpkin now. If we pull down here, start the ridges in the pumpkin just by bringing those in to the next line. Also, if you want to quickly draw pumpkins, I did not make an announcement on the channel, but everyone that has made purchases in the past from Gumroad actually got an email notification. I did come out with a whole new jack-o'-lantern set. It's a stamp set for Procreate. So if you want to check that out, I'll also leave the link to that in the description below. It's got a bunch of different jack-o'-lantern shapes along with eyes and mouths and noses. So I think there's like a total of 85 different stamps in there, but that's available on Gumroad right now if you want to do quick jack-o'-lanterns for the season of Halloween. So let's get back here to the pencils. Just wanted to bring that up since I didn't make a video on that one. It was kind of a surprise release that I just dropped and didn't make any announcement about, so. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead then for the top of the pumpkin here where it's cut out. We'll have that kind of just laying here off to the side. So we'll have the lid kind of coming down and around here. And then we can draw those same ridges in the top here. And once again, this is supposed to be sketchy and messy, so it's not going to be perfect. Do an oval here for the stem and have that coming down into the top here. Those other curves coming up here. All right, I think that's pretty good. I want to add some more background stuff here, but it's not going to be stuff that we're going to sketch in here. We'll just do it as a final step. So this is going to be our sketch. It's pretty good. We've got the general idea laid out. Like I said, I'm going to go in and add a lot more details to this as we go. The sketch process should be just, like I said, that getting the ideas out of your head. Don't try to make the sketch process too perfect. You're going to waste a lot of time and then have to go back. When you ink it, if you take the approach that I do with these designs and go in with the heavy inks, you're just going to have to redraw it anyways. So that's why I don't take a lot of time on the sketch process. I like to save it for the next step, which is the inking, which we'll start now. So let's go ahead then. We're going to come up here to the layers menu. I'm going to make a new layer. This is going to be the inks layer. And then I'm gonna hit the N for blend mode on layer 1, which is the sketch layer. And I'm just gonna turn down the opacity of this because I wanna be able to see it, but I don't want it to be too dark. So there we go. And then now I'm gonna switch over my brushes to my cartooning set, and we're gonna use the standard Inker Streamline to do this. With this, I like to have this brush set at my setting here, which is about 10% as far as size-wise goes. And the reason I like this brush, and I made this brush like this, is because you can get some really nice tapers on this brush and get a really nice technique. So we're gonna start here with the head, so I'll zoom in. I was using kind of a gray to sketch there, so I'm gonna change this to black. That's the first color here in the color palette. And this is where I like to decide where's the light source coming from. On this, like I said, adding in a background, I think I'm gonna have like a moon over here. So we're gonna have the light source coming in from this way. So with our line weights, that's what the light source helps us decide. Line weights, anything closer to the light source is gonna have a thinner line. Anything further away from the light source is gonna have a thicker line. Just kind of does the heavy lifting before you even add any shadows or highlights to tell the viewer exactly where the light source is coming from. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, with line weights, when I say thinner, thicker lines, I don't mean thin lines like this by the light source and lines like this by the shadow side. It's a very subtle difference. If you're not looking for it, you might not even see it, but I see a lot of people when they hear me say that, they take it from one extreme to the other, and it should be subtle. So with this then, the heavier lines are gonna be back here. Since we've got the moon over here, the lighter lines are gonna be here. So let's go ahead then, once again, like I said, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit closer. And we'll go ahead and start here in the back. Let's go ahead and just start with this line here. And this is one trick that I like to use. If you were going to just make this a solid line like we did initially, that's gonna be a really big stroke that you're gonna have to get to look pretty good. So with this being broke up, you've got the tufts of hair coming here, you've got the chin coming here. That means this line only has to go that far. So it helps us kind of control our lines, helps us be able to make them a little bit easier without trying them multiple times. So let's start here at the top, and I'm gonna bring this down and around here. I'll try that one more time just to get it down a little bit lower. There we go. Switch over here to my eraser. If I hold down on the eraser, it'll switch it to the same brush that I'm using to outline with. And then we'll bring in these lines just like this. Go ahead and bring this one down then here. Once again, a little bit thinner down here, coming in towards that chin. Using that eraser to pull back a little bit. And then a tapered line here for the chin. Just like that. Once again, being a little bit thicker here in the back and being a little bit lighter there towards the front. From here, I'm gonna go ahead and do the ears. Now this is one I like to use a secondary layer for the inks. So I'll make a new layer by going up to layers, hit the plus button. This allows me on the ears, I can start the stroke inside here, and then when I want to go ahead and erase, I don't have to worry about hitting that line that I've already done. So it just helps me with the overall stroke here. That way I get a nice smooth line. I know where the line starts because I'm already further inside. So I've got a little bit more control as the line goes around. Then going back to the eraser, you see I can hit this and I don't have to worry about erasing those lines that I did around here. Makes it super easy. I'm gonna stay on that same layer because doing the insides of the ears here is kind of the same thing. And I'm just gonna use some kind of jagged lines here for a fur effect. Just kind of close those off there. And sometimes you might want to start like here with the line, or if you want to start on the other side first, whichever way you feel most comfortable making the line, you're going to see that your hand and your arm are going to work better going from certain directions. So when you start a line and you don't like it, maybe try it starting at the opposite end And just the way that your arm moves and your hand moves, you might get a better feel for the line that you're trying to accomplish. All right, now that we've got all that overlapping done, we can go ahead and coming back up to layers, we can pinch those back together. Back to my brush here. And I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit more. So we're working here closer on this part. So let's do the nose next. I'm just gonna bring that around. And then I can drag and drop my color into there, the black. Here with the eraser then, I'm just gonna erase a highlight there across the nose. Coming back to my brush now. Now with the eyes, I've talked about this before too, if you've watched my previous videos. I like to have the tops of the eyelids a little bit thicker, just because it does the heavy lifting once again of kind of showing where those eyelashes are, where the top of the eye is, without having to draw all that extra. And the lid, so if you start with a kind of light press here, and then press harder and heavier as you come around, and then let up that pressure again, you see that line goes from thin to thick, then back to thin. Do the same thing over here, and you get that nice change in the lines. I just need to connect the lines once again here, just kind of a thin line. I'm actually going to do this one on a separate layer too, just because connecting these, I don't have to worry about stopping exactly where I'm at. And then when I erase, I don't have to worry about hitting that line that I've already done. You see how easy that is to kind of clean up. And then here, that one goes over the edge, so I can just go back to that original layer and do that. So see, it makes it just so much easier using multiple layers like that on the lines. And then I think I'm gonna go ahead and stay on that one that I just did, because doing the eyes here will kind of help me there as well. So we'll go ahead and do the ovals here for the pupil. I think I want it just a little bit bigger here. Kind of maybe come down to the whole section there, and that's why I did a multiple line layer here, just so it fills up that whole one. And of course this one now is connected because that's the layer that we're on, so we got to be careful there. Same thing here, just pulling this up. This is going to be a thin line coming around here. Over here. This one we don't have to do as much here, because it's a smaller area hidden kind of behind that nose. And then we'll pull the thinner line around here as well. And then erasing to get it to where we want. Okay, looks good. I'm gonna go ahead now and combine those layers again by pinching them. Then I'm gonna grab my eraser here, and we're just gonna erase some highlights here in the eyes. So we got a nice kind of shine here for those. Looks good. Back to the brush, and I'm going to go ahead and do the eyebrows next here. We'll pull heavier line down here, once again to add some weight to these eyebrows underneath, and then a lighter line here at the top. See how that implies a shadow and implies some weight to that line there. Looks good. And coming back down here to the mouth, kind of draw a squiggle here to the side of the mouth as it comes in. Pull this back. And the line here I'll start with kind of a tapered line that gets heavier and darker and thicker as it goes back. And then we'll get the tongue here at the bottom. And then a curved line to kind of close off the mouth there. Pull them back here, you can kind of see where we're at right now. So the head, pretty much got that inked. It looks good, so we can go ahead down here and start on the body now. The first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and get the pumpkin line around here. So let's start with this, getting an oval around. Kind of locked into that shape that we've already got there. Let's try that one more time. It wasn't totally even there. All right, we got some extra stray lines here. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer to do the body because we're going to have the overlaps here again. So back to my brush, get the back line here. I want this to be about the same thickness coming down and around. And get this line here for the hand. And the arm coming up here with a tapered line. Get those paw lines in here. We're kind of thin lines here for those. Pull that body line down here. Oops. And pulling this arm down. And the hand around here with, once again, those thinner paw lines there. Thin line here and around for the belly. And then I'm going to come back here to that layer 2. Actually, let's make a layer on top of this one. This is going to make it even easier. If we make another layer here, because I kind of want this ridge around the top. So if we draw a ridge like this, kind of let that lock in. See, now we've got that top of the pumpkin there. I'm going to fix this line a little bit here. We got a little overlap there where the circle closed. Now we can go ahead, layer 4, layer 2. We're going to combine these. And now we're going to go to our eraser and we're going to erase the parts of that body overlaps of the pumpkin. Once again, this is why we did it like this. It makes it super easy. We don't have to worry about hitting those lines that we've already done. Stop there. And see, this is then, so I'm coming down here. I went down too far because that was on that other layer. Try that one more time here. There we go. Now this is going to be a visible part of that edge, so we don't want to erase that. We do want to erase this one though. And we want to erase this one. And we want to go back to the body layer. Layer 3, I've got a little overlap there. Get that? We're going to erase the overlap here. And actually this one should not have gotten erased. We need to get that back in there. Sorry about that. As I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's not right. So the body layer here, to erase this one. Then back to the pumpkin layer. Gonna erase this one. And this one. Get that line cleaned up there that I kind of hit. And then the body layer 3, just this one little part there. Okay, so there we go. We've got it done. A little mess up there as far as erasing a part that shouldn't have been, but we got it fixed. So now we can go ahead then, that layer 3, the layer 2, we can combine those again. So now we're back to one single pumpkin layer, or one single line layer, totally. For the pumpkin itself, starting on the edge here, let's go ahead and switch back to our brush, zoom in a little bit. Starting on the edge here, we'll pull down line here. It's going to stay pretty thick the entire way down, pretty solid consistency. This we're going to start out with a taper, and it's going to get thicker as it moves down. Bring this one up, a little bit more of a curve there instead of a straightened off line there at the bottom. And there we go. So we've got the pumpkin. Then we can go over here and move into the pumpkin top. I'm going to kind of start to do some curves here to where I know where the curves coming up are going to be. Pull those in. Just tapered lines at the top there. Kind of continue that curve down there. This I want a little bit lighter on this side as far as the line weight goes. I'll do that again and pull some tapers here. Just like that. And then the stem here at the top. I think the stem's a little bit big, so as I do this, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And this is one of those instances where the lines themselves from the sketch don't necessarily have to be the exact lines that you make in the inking stage. So those are just kind of the way to get the idea out of your head and onto the paper, or onto the canvas in this case, or the screen. So if you don't like something, don't feel like you're locked into those lines that you drew in that sketch. Those are just supposed to be there to guide you along the way. All right, so we are done then with the inks. Everything's complete there. So let's turn off the sketch and we can see what we're left with. So it looks pretty good. From here then, we're ready to move on to colors. So to start coloring in, we're going to make a new layer here. I'm going to drag and drop this below layer 2. And then layer 2, I'm going to select this, make sure it's blue, tap on it again to bring up the side menu here, and we're going to set it as reference. That's going to allow us to drag and drop our colors into here on layer 3. They're going to be a separate layer than layer 2, so it's not going to hurt the layer 2 lines. It also makes doing the shading and the highlighting a lot easier, not having the colors and the lines on the same layer. Now we've got that decided then, I'm going to go to my color palette. The first color here is going to be our main base color for the koala. So as I drag and drop then, watch up here in the center, we're going to have continue filling with recolor pop up. We're going to tap on that, and you'll see right here there's a cursor. We drag that cursor and then just tap on the areas we want colored in. It fills those in. There's no need to go in and do them separately or drag and drop each time. Moving on down then, we've got a darker color here for the eyebrows. Here, I don't even hit continue filling with recolor because it's only twice that I do that, and honestly, it's the same number of arm motions. So the ears here, same thing, and the tongue, I'm just going to do that real quick. Back up to the color palette, we've got this lighter kind of off-white color for the belly, so we'll throw that in there. Next up, we've got the orange for the pumpkin. There and there. Oops. And then we've also got the inside of the pumpkin here. Be careful here, you see there, I just hit the lines. This is where I really recommend you zoom in so you get really good control over where that's going, because you don't want to hit the lines, and if you mess up and you don't realize you hit the lines and just do it again, you're going to have kind of that edge line colored in with that orange, and it's just going to look bad moving on. So make sure you get in there really tight to be able to see. Color palette again, back to this light orange here, and you'll see I was still on that, so it changed that last section. So always make sure you tap something up here in the menus to get that recolor kind of cleared out. All right, got that done. And then next up, we've got the brown here for the stem. Get that in there. We've got white for the eyes. Before I do that, let's go ahead, this next layer down, we've got this kind of darker reddish color. This is what we're going to use for the shadows, but I am going to also use that for the mouth. So let's move down to that second row. We'll drag and drop that in. And then we're going to come back up here to the layers menu. I'm going to make a new layer for the eyes because we're going to do some shading to the eyes. It's going to be a lot easier if we do it on a secondary layer. So with that new layer made then, I'm going to turn off the background here so you can see the white, which we're going to select now, actually being filled in there. And we also need to fill in the white of the eyes here, those highlights. Those we can't really see, so I'm just going to do it by hand. And then finally we've got the blue here, which I think I'm going to do that on a separate layer too. So let's make another new layer here, and we'll drag and drop that blue in. We're going to have to zoom in quite a bit here so we can actually see where this is going. And make sure we're on there. All right. We've got the highlight here in the nose, but we'll fill that in later when we do the actual highlight. So let's turn back on the background color. And we've got our color flats done. As you can see, color flats, honestly, the quickest part of the entire process. Takes no time at all, goes really fast, especially using the reference technique and dragging and dropping and using the color fill there. So that's it for the color flats. Next up, we're gonna move into actually adding in the shadows and the highlights. We'll start with the shadows. So to do this, let's go down to layer 3. Let's make a new layer on top of this one. And then we're gonna tap this layer and we're gonna set this as clipping mask. So for this, we're gonna draw our shadows on this separate layer. They're going to only show up though on what's on layer 3. So anything that's out here in the background, this white, it's not gonna show up. It has to be colored in on this layer 3 for it to show up on layer 6. The idea behind this though is it is a separate layer. So we're gonna come in with this really dark red magenta color, which isn't gonna look good right now. You see how dark that is. But since this is on a separate layer, we'll be able to open up the blend mode, drop the opacity on this, and it won't affect the colors underneath. It's gonna let those show through since it's on a separate layer. So let's go ahead then and start. Like I said, layer 6 is what we're on right now. Light source is coming from here. So the shadows are gonna be back here on this side. I'm gonna zoom in here just a little bit so we can see. And I'm just gonna kind of fill in this whole back area. We're gonna use an eraser to remove some of this, but then we'll continue to kind of pull this shadow up and around here. Let's continue down. And what I'm doing is just kind of outlining where I want the shadow to be. And then once I get a pretty good area connected and closed off, we'll just drag and drop the color in there. I'm gonna zoom in even more so you can see. And as I'm doing this, you'll kind of notice what I'm using as my guides for this of how the lines go is, and how the shadows go, is just basically the lines that I already laid out initially in the inking stage. It just follows the same curve, the same flow of those lines. And now that we've got a big area blocked off, we need to come up here, we need to turn off reference, because right now if I dragged and dropped, it would fill in the entire face. So if we tap layer 2, turn off reference, and come back down to that layer 6, we can drag and drop, and since we have all that connected, it fills it in. Now this is where, like I said, it looks really dark. So we'll come back up here to our layers menu, open up that blend mode, and then we'll drag down the opacity on this. So I'm thinking probably about 22% looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and use that. Back to the brush then, I'm gonna go ahead and come in underneath these eyebrows here on this side. We'll get in underneath the curve of the ear there, kind of taper that back up and around. Little bit of shadow here at the bottom. Pulling down and around then, come down here underneath the chin. It's down around the arm. You're gonna see, I'm gonna go back in and, like I said, erase some of this, so this isn't all gonna be filled in, but I just wanna get a good portion as a jumping off point there so I can see it. Then we'll go ahead and get in here. This is the inside of the pumpkin, so it's obviously gonna be darker. Kind of a shadow here coming around as well. This paw is going to give off a shadow here. Same thing here with this paw. I have a little shadow there. And then just kind of continue this around. Be a pretty big shadow back here. See how I'm following kind of the curve of that line and how these lines flow, just to give it a believable feel. Even though it's cartoon, we still want it to look natural and look like it makes sense as far as the way that everything lines up and goes in with each other. All right. I think I'll pull a little bit of a shadow here too. Just like that. All right, coming down here, throwing some shadows around these creases of the pumpkin. Just bring those out a little bit more. Just like that. And then a little bit back here. And underneath that top. All right, looks good. Now it's time to do the erasing, so we're gonna go back then to the eraser, and I'm just gonna pull away from the edges. If you have too much of a shadow, it really doesn't allow the viewer to recognize that there is a shadow there, so if you have these values against each other, like this, and you can see them, it makes more of an impact. And it's easier to tell that there is a shadow there. Do the same thing here at the top of the start of the head, here at the bottom of the head. So again, just kind of following around those lines we've already got established. And the ear back here, just around that top. Probably pull some here in the bottom of the pink too, just so we can tell there. And a little bit at the bottom here. And I think I'm gonna let that just bump up against the eye there. I think that still looks good like that. And then finally we'll hit the pumpkin a tad bit down here. This is really a thin line here, so I'm not even gonna mess with that. I'm just gonna let that sit against the arm and the hand there. Okay, so that's gonna be pretty much it for the shadows then. So now we can move on to the highlights. So once again, back up here to the layers menu, new layer. I'm gonna tap this. Once again, set this as clipping mask. And then for this, I've got this kind of bright blue color here. We're gonna use that just for a really kind of bright highlight here along the sides. So as I zoom in up here a little bit closer to see, pull in some of these highlights here. So again, with that light source being here against the right-hand side, this is the parts that are gonna get the highlights. Just pull these around. Just want some nice smooth lines, so it might take a couple of attempts to get it exactly right. If you go too thick, you can always use the eraser as well and just kind of pull back, so it's a kind of give and take type of thing. Then back to the brush here. Kind of make that one a little bit thinner here across the edge. There we go. This now for that nose, I'm going to come back up then to layer 3. That's our color flats. And we'll just go ahead and color in the nose with that highlight. Then I'm going to go back then to the layer 7. The reason we couldn't do it on layer 7 is because we never filled that in with color. So there's nothing there for it to clip to. So that's why we had to go in and fill it in on the actual color flats layer. I'll just kind of continue here to highlight certain areas that's going to catch that light source. At the front of the body here, bring one down here. And the side of this arm. Top of that hand come down. Going with the eraser and kind of pull this back just a tad bit. Hit the front of this paw here. Around the front of the pumpkin here. Kind of moving our thing as we go. And this is also why I do the highlights and the shadows on 2 different layers, because like here we have that shaded in here, highlight here, and if I went over, then I'd be erasing the highlight that we already did. So having these separate just really kind of saves you some time and some trouble as far as hitting the wrong areas. Lets you be a little bit more sloppy and you don't have to be as precise. Which is always one of the great things about digital art too, is it's a lot more forgiving than traditional. And back to the eraser to kind of clean up. All right. Pulling back to kind of see what we're left with. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to go back in here with the tongue. Just hit that a couple times there. And let's get the back of the tongue too with the shadows here. If we go back to our shadow layer, we can just hit the back of that tongue just a little bit. And here, I don't think I'm going to drop the opacity on the highlights. I kind of like the look of that super bright blue. I think it makes it pop a little bit more. So we're just going to leave it like that. I think it looks good. Finally then, if you remember, we did the eyes on a separate layer. So let's go ahead and work on those next. So layer 4 is the white of the eyes. If I turn that off, you can see. So we're going to make a layer on top of this one. Once again, we're going to set this to clipping mask. And then we're going to go back up to our color palette, and I'm going to choose this kind of brighter blue here. With that selected then, I'm going to zoom in so you can see the strokes that I'm going to make. And we're going to pull this around the top and the sides where the shadows would be over here on this side. Just like this. Kind of following that around. Don't want to get too far over here to the right. And just like that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to the adjustments layer. We're going to go to Gaussian blur, and we're going to slide this to the right so it gives us kind of a nice flow of that color here. Just blends it really nice, and then we're going to drop the opacity as well. So if we go up here to the layers menu, go to N for blend mode, we can just drop this down, and we've got that kind of nice flow. There are the colors. From here then, I'm going to make one more layer on top of here, and then we're going to go up to the color palette and choose white, and we'll just do a couple of highlights here up at the top to kind of come into that blue, so you can kind of see those two. Kind of breaks that up just a little bit, and then we can blur those as well. So if we go up here to Gaussian blur again, we can slide those. All right. I just noticed too that it sounds like some large machinery just showed up outside doing some work outside the studio. So if it got a little loud, I do apologize. All right, finally then we've got the irises here. We want to do the same thing to those, which is layer 5. I want to add some shadows in there. So we're gonna make a new layer here. We're gonna tap that, set that to clipping mask, and then we'll use that same, actually let's use this bottom. There's a blue down here we're gonna use for the background. Let's use that. And then we can just kind of follow around here along the back side. So this has got just a little bit of a different color to it, a little bit of a shadow. We'll do it down here at the bottom of this one. And then we're going to drop the opacity of that one. So back up to layers, blend mode, and just drag this down. So we just got a little bit of shift there. All right, looks good. And pulling back out, you can see what we're left with. So that's basically the main finished design as far as the koala and the pumpkin itself goes. Said I want to go ahead and do a background here, so let's go ahead and finish off the design with that next. So to do this, we're going to come back up to our layers menu. We're going to come down underneath layer 3, and we're going to make a new layer. With that made then, we're going to go ahead and come up to our colors palette, and we'll choose, well, I guess we're still on it, that dark blue. We'll use that, and let's just kind of frame him with an oval here in the background. So we'll drag and drop the color in there. And then with the arrow, I'm just gonna kind of reposition this. We're gonna select uniform to change the size. I just wanna make sure that there's no tangents, that it's not coming into one of these other lines where those meet, and I didn't want it to come down below here. So I think that looks pretty good where that's at. And then to have the same control over the next step, we're gonna make another new layer. So back up to our layers, plus for new layer, and then we'll grab the yellow, that's gonna be our moon. So let's draw an oval here, holding down with the Apple pencil and down with our finger again. We'll lock it into that circle, and then we can drag and drop that in. And then finally, I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna up the size of my brush just a little bit, and I'm gonna make some stars here in the background. You can make different sizes of these just by pressing down. And actually, let's do these on a separate layer because we can add a glow to these. So let's make another new layer here, and we'll just tap these here. Like I said, just the different pressure gives different sizes of those. Then we got two options we can use. Gaussian blur again. There's also bloom that we can use. If we select that and slide that to the right, that'll make those have that glow around them. And you have the ability to add whatever percentage of bloom you want. So I think around 70, 80 looks pretty good. Go ahead and lock that in. Then finally, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a new layer. And grab my black here and zoom in and just sign this guy. And we will be finished with today's tutorial. All right, so there we go, a Halloween koala just in time for the October holiday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Feel free to leave me a comment and let me know if there was a technique that was new that you learned today. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos just like this one. Also, if you guys take part in any of these videos, if you follow along, if you make a design based on one of my tutorials, I definitely want to see it. So feel free to share it if you're on Instagram or Twitter. Definitely post it on there. Make sure you tag me at BeeJayDeL so it pops up so I can take a look at it. Love to see what you guys do based on these videos, and it's just awesome to see. So thanks so much for following along. As for me, I can also be found online, BeeJayDeL.com. So that's it. Until next time, keep creating.